She was the ultimate Hollywood goddess, gilded in beauty, wrapped in mystery. But behind Marilyn Monroe's dazzling smile hid a storm of secrets so volatile they spooked the most powerful men in America. When whispers of a red diary emerged, filled with names, nuclear secrets, and desperate love, the FBI reportedly panicked. What did she write? Who did it threaten? And could this diary hold the key to her tragic demise? FBI surveillance. To the world, she was just Marilyn, blonde, sensual, magnetic. But to the FBI, she was something else entirely. A threat. A woman who knew too much, spoke to the wrong people, and perhaps loved the wrong men. As Cold War paranoia surged, J. Edgar Hoover's FBI began surveilling her every move. The files, now declassified, reveal a disturbing obsession. They watched her not just for who she was, but for who she knew. Monroe was romantically involved with playwright Arthur Miller, a known leftist and critic of McCarthyism. She attended rallies, dined with activists, and flirted with the boundaries of acceptable Hollywood politics. To Hoover, this wasn't a coincidence. It was a risk. Could Marilyn, with her sex appeal and fame, be an unwitting pawn in a political game? Or worse, a willing player? The FBI began wiretapping her phones. Her home was bugged. Confidential informants reported back on her political leanings and rumored affairs. Her connections to high-ranking officials, including then-Senator and later President John F. Kennedy, only deepened the Bureau's interest. She was, as some memos described her, emotionally unstable, reckless, and exposed to classified intelligence through romantic proximity. But perhaps the most chilling aspect wasn't that the FBI watched her. It's what they feared she would do next. Rumors swirled that she had written everything down. Names, conversations, even whispered secrets about national security. And when whispers of a red diary reached Hoover's desk, the tone changed. Suddenly, Monroe wasn't just a security concern, she was a ticking time bomb. What if she published? What if the public learned what she knew? The files suggest that surveillance didn't end with her life. In fact, some believe that federal agents were in her Brentwood home before the local police, combing through belongings, confiscating evidence, especially the diary. No warrant, no trace, only questions. Kennedy affairs. Her breathy voice serenaded him before the world. "Happy birthday, Mr. President." But what the cameras didn't capture were the whispers that followed Marilyn Monroe and John F. Kennedy, whispers that turned into roars after her death. Theirs wasn't a fleeting Hollywood fling. According to multiple sources, it was something deeper and far more dangerous. Monroe had allegedly carried on separate affairs with both John F. Kennedy and his brother, Attorney General Robert F. Kennedy. At first, it was glamorous: clandestine meetings, lavish weekends, and champagne-soaked nights at the Beverly Hills Hotel. But it didn't stay romantic for long. By 1962, Monroe was reportedly spiraling. She was in love, perhaps with both brothers, but felt abandoned. When her calls stopped being returned and visits canceled without warning, Monroe threatened to speak out. Friends later claimed she told them, "If I go public, it'll bring down the entire White House." Did she have proof? Some say yes, and that proof may have lived in her red diary. Conversations allegedly recorded, secrets about nuclear policy, civil rights tension, and even details about CIA-led operations, none of which belonged in the hands of an actress. But Monroe, in Love and Betrayed, was reckless with what she knew. And that's when things turned dark. According to conspiracy theorists and some former insiders, Robert Kennedy was in Los Angeles the night Marilyn died. While official records place him elsewhere, multiple witnesses claim to have seen him near her home. Could he have visited to demand her silence? Or to retrieve something? Some believe he came for the diary. Others say she begged him not to leave her, that she threatened to leak everything to the press. And that night, she died. Coincidence? Maybe. But the disappearance of phone records, autopsy inconsistencies, and missing police documents only deepened suspicion. Did the Kennedys love her, or fear her, or perhaps both? The Red Diary. If the legend of Marilyn Monroe has a holy grail, it's the Red Diary. Small, leather-bound, rumored to be bursting with names, dates, secrets, secrets that could unravel governments. Monroe was said to write in it every day, often in bed, documenting not just her emotional turmoil, but everything whispered in her ear by powerful men. Close friends, including hairdresser Sidney Gilleroff and housekeeper Eunice Murray, claimed to have seen the diary. John Carmen, a former press agent and confidant, swore that Monroe had shown her pages, one allegedly mentioning atomic secrets and Latin American operatives. That's not pillow talk. That's political dynamite. Inside the diary, she reportedly recorded everything from confidential pillowside remarks made by John and Robert Kennedy to cryptic mentions of Project Bay, mob bosses, and intel briefings. Whether real or imagined, what she wrote scared someone enough that the diary disappeared. After her death, the red diary was nowhere to be found. Yet Monroe's belongings, jewelry, dresses, scripts, were all intact. It was as if someone came looking for one thing and one thing only. Even former LAPD officers have stated off the record that the scene at Monroe's home had been too clean. Witnesses claim federal men in dark suits entered her house before the coroner. But officially, there's no mention of the red diary, no photos, no police reports, nothing. Where did it go? Some claim the FBI seized it and buried it in a government archive. Others say it ended up in the hands of a powerful collector, hidden in a vault. A few believe it was destroyed, burned, shredded, erased, to protect legacies and preserve political power. But the scariest theory, that the diary never left the room, that it remains hidden somewhere behind drywall or floorboards in that Brentwood home, waiting for the right set of eyes to uncover it. Or worse, that someone still alive today holds its secrets like a ticking bomb. Marilyn was once quoted saying, "If I ever tell everything I know, it'll be the end of the world." Maybe she already did, and maybe that's why she had to be silenced. Brentwood home as secret vault. To the world, Marilyn Monroe's Brentwood bungalow was just a charming Spanish-style home with arched doorways and sunlit rooms. But to those who've studied her life, it wasn't a house, it was a vault. Monroe purchased the home just months before her death. It was her first and only real home, her retreat from the chaos of Hollywood. But for all its modesty, it became a fortress of speculation, the place where she died, and possibly where she hid her most damning secrets. From the outside, the house seemed peaceful. Inside, investigators found something else: pill bottles, a phone off the hook, bed sheets in disarray. But what they didn't find was even more telling. No letters, no diary, no personal recordings. Friends later claimed she kept her sensitive writings in a hidden compartment, possibly in a chest or behind a mirror. What kind of secrets might she have stored there? Private correspondence with the Kennedys? Documents about FBI surveillance? Audio tapes? Some believe Monroe had the foresight to hide evidence, especially as she became more paranoid in her final weeks. She reportedly told friends she felt watched and believed they were coming for her. She had even installed new locks. Was she preparing for someone to break in, or for something to be taken? More disturbingly, some investigators believe the house had already been searched before the LAPD ever arrived. Her psychiatrist, Dr. Ralph Greenson, was one of the first on the scene. Why was he there before emergency services? And why did police allow so many people to trample the scene before it was secured? The home's layout had strange architectural choices, small storage spaces that didn't appear on original blueprints. One room had a sealed vent that some believe once held recordings. Were these just architectural quirks or clever hiding places? In the years since, the house has been bought, sold, and nearly demolished. But after public outcry, the demolition was halted. Preservationists and conspiracy theorists alike argue, you don't destroy a crime scene, especially one with this many unanswered questions, because somewhere inside those sun-bleached walls, Monroe may have left behind more than memories. She may have left the truth. The final phone call. In the waning hours of August 4th, 1962, Marilyn Monroe made a phone call that still echoes like a death rattle through Hollywood's corridors. It was late, sometime after midnight. The voice on the other end belonged to actor Peter Lawford, JFK's brother-in-law. What Monroe said chilled him to his core. Say goodbye to Pat, say goodbye to Jack, and say goodbye to yourself because you're a nice guy. Lawford, shaken, hung up and immediately tried calling her back. No answer. Over and over he dialed, but the line had gone silent. What had she meant? Was it a goodbye? A threat? A cry for help? Or something far more sinister? What we do know is this. The call took place hours before Monroe was officially declared dead. And yet the timeline of that night remains disturbingly murky. Her housekeeper, Eunice Murray, claimed to have sensed something was wrong around midnight. Yet she didn't alert authorities until after 3:30 a.m. That's more than 3 hours of mystery. What happened in those hours? Witnesses have offered conflicting accounts. Some claim Monroe spoke to Bobby Kennedy that same evening. Others insist she made another call to a journalist, threatening to go public with what she knew about the Kennedys and government secrets. But the strangest part? Every record of Monroe's phone activity that night disappeared. Phone logs gone, police transcripts incomplete, witness testimonies altered or redacted. Was someone erasing her final communications? What if that call wasn't a farewell, but a warning? A desperate last attempt to reach someone before whatever or whoever was coming arrived. Lawford would later claim he felt something terrible was about to happen, but didn't act quickly enough. Others believe he knew more than he let on. He was, after all, tightly woven into both Hollywood's inner circle and the Kennedy family's political sphere. The missing records from that night are not just an oversight, they're a void, a gaping hole in the timeline of a woman's death. And within that void, every theory gains momentum. Did she overdose by her own hand? Was she silenced? Was the call her last scream for help, or the trigger that led to her death? Only one person knew for sure, and she's never spoken again. Financial exploitation. At the time of her death, Marilyn Monroe should have been one of the richest women in Hollywood. She had starred in blockbuster after blockbuster. Her name alone could fill theaters. And yet, her bank accounts were nearly empty. Her estate was valued at just $1.6 million, modest by today's standards, and shockingly low for someone of her stature. Where had the money gone? Some point to Monroe's lavish lifestyle, the clothes, the jewels, the therapists, and private doctors. But others believe there's a darker explanation, one involving deceit, manipulation, and financial exploitation by the very people she trusted most. Monroe's business affairs were handled by a team of lawyers, agents, and managers who rarely gave her full access to her own finances. She didn't fully control her money. Even her production company, Marilyn Monroe Productions, though groundbreaking in its creation, was hamstrung by studio interference. Insiders claim that she was routinely underpaid for her films compared to her male co-stars. Worse, some of her contracts were worded in ways that gave studios and managers more profit than her. She once called herself the slave of the system, and that wasn't just artistic frustration, it was literal. She was working, and others were reaping the reward. When she died, most of her estate went not to her family, but to her acting teacher, Lee Strasberg. Over the years, his estate continued to profit from her image, long after she was gone. As Marilyn's photos, film rights, and likeness were commercialized, millions poured in, but not to her name, not to her bloodline. Her legacy was sold off, piece by piece. And then there's the mystery of the missing funds. Several financial records, ledgers, statements, even check stubs, were reportedly removed or went missing entirely after her death. Some believe they may have been intentionally destroyed to hide a paper trail of embezzlement or mismanagement. If Marilyn Monroe wrote about this in her Red Diary, if she documented who stole from her, who betrayed her, and how she planned to take back her power, it would have made enemies out of powerful men. And powerful men don't like secrets that can't be controlled. The studio system's control. Marilyn Monroe may have been the most photographed woman in the world, but in the eyes of the studio system, she was just a product, a shimmering, desirable, perfectly packaged commodity. And when she started asking questions, they tried to shut her down. From her earliest days at 20th Century Fox, Monroe was molded into an image, the ditzy blonde bombshell. She was told what to wear, how to speak, whom to date. Her contracts were airtight, allowing studios to loan her out for films, appearances, and promotional deals, often without her consent. While her face earned millions, her paychecks told a different story. Behind the glamour was a woman growing increasingly furious with the system that built her. In 1954, Monroe did the unthinkable. She walked out on her studio. She flew to New York, studied with Lee Strasberg, formed her own production company. She demanded better scripts, higher pay, and more respect. The studio executives were stunned and enraged. No star, especially not a woman, had ever defied them like this. But Monroe paid a heavy price. They branded her difficult, unreliable. They spread stories of drug abuse, mental breakdowns, sexual impropriety. They blackballed her behind the scenes while publicly pretending to support her comeback. Even when she returned to Fox for The Misfits, her power was illusory. She was constantly monitored, her creative suggestions ignored. Her mental health deteriorated as she battled insomnia, addiction, and studio pressure, all while the men around her profited. Some conspiracy theorists suggest that the studio system may have played a role in her downfall, not by directly causing it, but by creating the perfect storm: financial control, public humiliation, and psychological manipulation. What if Marilyn had exposed the system in her diary? What if she had documented the forced auditions, the coercion, the pressure to trade intimacy for roles? If those pages existed, they wouldn't just embarrass a few executives. They would expose the machinery of exploitation that built Hollywood's golden age. And maybe, just maybe, someone in power made sure those pages never saw the light of day. Marilyn wasn't just a victim of fame. She was a threat to those who built their empires on her beauty and her silence. The alleged hidden room. Whispers of a secret room inside Marilyn Monroe's Brentwood home have haunted conspiracy theorists for decades. A hidden chamber, a false wall, a storage space built not for function, but for protection. The bungalow, simple by celebrity standards, reportedly had architectural quirks not present in official blueprints. Tucked behind a closet or beneath the floorboards, some say, was a concealed room used by Monroe to safeguard her most personal items: letters, recordings, photographs, and yes, her infamous red diary. Friends later hinted that Monroe had a place no one else knew about, somewhere she could lock away the pieces of her life that were too dangerous to leave in plain sight, a sanctuary for secrets. But after her death, no such room was found. Or was it? Some believe federal agents found it before anyone else could, that the room was emptied, scrubbed of any evidence. Others think it still exists, sealed behind drywall, waiting to be discovered. In 2023, when developers planned to demolish her Brentwood home, the public outcry stopped it. Why? Because for many, Monroe's house isn't just real estate, it's a cold case. And if that hidden room exists, it could still hold the final key. What was in Marilyn Monroe's diary that terrified the powerful? We may never know, but the missing pieces, redacted files, vanishing evidence, and silenced voices tell a story louder than words. Was it suicide or something darker? Tell us what you believe. Like, subscribe, and stay curious, because the truth is never buried for long.